Okay, in this video, we are going to be dealing with sentence equivalence questions, or, well, sentence equivalence answer choices that are words you don't know. But first off, let's read the sentence and, of course, want to identify type of sentence. Never one to blank her duties. Heather surprised. Surprised her colleagues. It's a shift in perception. So we have a sentence shifter. And so now what is going on here? Well, she surprised her colleagues because she left important tasks unfinished. So usually she was one to complete her tasks. But let's look at the word up front here. Never one to, never one to ignore her duties. So we have to take the idea of coming up with the opposite here. She doesn't usually leave tasks unfinished. She finishes them, but then the never one to, there's that kind of double shift. So we've noticed that. We've come up with our own word. Now, of course, it's time to match and look for similar words. So if you ignore something, you neglect it, that works perfectly. You don't embrace it. You definitely don't finish it. Shirk, don't know what that is. You cherish something, that's not to ignore it. And then you get to the word delegate, and you think, well, I've heard of delegate and delegate duties, and I can see that kind of makes sense. She never wanted to delegate her duties. She does them herself. And let's say you convince yourself of that interpretation. But wait a second. We're dealing with sentence equivalence. Does neglect something, is that the same as to delegate it? So I have a friend, John, and he needs to do a task. And I can't do this task. So I'm going to say, hey, John, can you do that task for me? And he says, sure. John finishes the task. I delegated the task to him. Is that the same as neglecting a task? If I were to neglect it, I wouldn't even delegate it to John in the first place. These are very different words. So this can't be the answer. Even if you convince yourself that it works in context, you need that pair. Neglect definitely works. And so what's the unknown word? It's shirk. And that word definitely works. So don't be afraid of the unknown words. Let's try another one. Let's try a harder one. This one's kind of easy. A consummate technical wizard at the piano. Franz Liszt was so blank as to be able to faithfully mimic the playing of others that Chopin once exclaimed that he thought his own ghost was at the keys. Okay, well, it's a kind of identified type of sentence. There's no shifting going on, so it's not too bad. But in coming up with our own word here, we're going to see that this is difficult. What's the own word here? What's our own word? What's going on in this sentence equivalence? So this guy was good. He was good at the piano. He was a wizard, technical wizard. But he was so blank as to be able to mimic people. So another pianist or another person thought, I heard this guy playing, and it was like I was playing. I could hear my own ghost. This guy was so good. But what sort of good is he? He can adapt and play like anybody else, mimic anyone else. And what's that word? So we come up with our own word in a way, and then we want to match that with words. He's so good he can be like anyone else or mimic anyone else. And that word is versatile. So there's our word. To be expert, the very first word though, does that work? Well, if you're expert, you're really good, but does that mean you can adapt to anyone's style? Well, kind of, but not really. Whereas versatile definitely means that. And then here's the thing. Is versatile and expert the same word? And the answer is no. And that's where we want to remember. Don't be afraid of unknown words. Get rid of expert. What are some unknown words here? Well, let's go through them. Protean. Unknown word. Difficult word. Haunting. Ghost at the keys. Trap answer. Nothing to do with the pianist Franz Liszt himself. Doesn't make sense. Efficient. Efficient just means you get a job done. Doesn't quite work in context. Again, we want to synonym for versatile. Get rid of efficient. Then we have amenable. If you're amenable to something, you're agreeable. You go along with the program. We just want someone who's really good and can take on many different forms and shapes in terms of their ability to copy any other pianist out there. And that word, taking on many different forms, is protean. It's a synonym for versatile. You can adapt to many different, in this case, many different styles of playing. There are two answers. So remember, don't be afraid of unknown words. And don't try to make any of the other answer choices work, such as expert, when they're not quite synonyms with the other answer choice.